And I'm back. Welcome to the RC World M3 Prep Zone Analysis. Guys, first of all, I would like to thank you. The way you are receiving our efforts so enthusiastically, it is giving us a lot of impetus to improve and to help you to the best extent possible. We, the team of Prep Zone, will constantly be coming up with more problems, more analysis, so that while you are preparing for your CAT, these things actually help you focus in the right direction so that you do not get distracted by various other things that are put out on the internet. One question that I received from a lot of people is that why do not I put my video over here? Um, I definitely will put my video as in when I'll be showing myself up. I tried doing that, but somehow I realized that while I was giving the analysis of RC, a significant portion is covered by the inset in which my photo would be displayed. So when I'll be taking care of something which requires my constant attention and of course the facial expressions, I definitely will come. Thank you so very much for that. Few people also asked me to give a little bit of introduction about me. So I have simply put it down in this slide here. And now we begin our analysis for M3. This was a little typical one in two senses. First, it was a longer RC exam. There were two RCs, so more questions. Secondly, the difficulty level was a little more towards high. So if I talk about moderate to high, that is what I'll be categorizing this into. Not because the content or the RC was difficult to read, but because of the questions and especially the options that were difficult to comprehend and eliminate. This is what we will be focusing on the RC World M3 Prep Zone analysis today. And the way we do it always, I would like you to pause this video and read this RC before we begin. I'm sure you must have done that by now. So here is something for you. To go back to these discussions about how to deep dive into the RC, go to my first video, which is Prep Zone Analysis of RC, the RC World M1. When I talk about this particular RC, it talks about electroconvulsive therapy. Once again, the same way, we will try to understand the RC in the best possible manner. Once it is within us, then there will be no question that will not be able to solve. So here is something that I'm going to read with you now. ECT is a controversial, remember the word controversial psychiatric treatment involving the induction of a seizure in a patient by passing electricity through the brain. While beneficial effects of electrically induced seizures are evident and predictable in most patients, you see this word while, that means some change is going to happen. Now the start of this passage has been that the passage has introduced electroconvulsive therapy. Probably the passage will now talk about it. And what kind of talk the passage wants to talk about? Let us see that. It says, while beneficial effects are evident and predictable in most patients, a unified mechanism of action has not yet been established and remains the subject of numerous investigations. Probably the author now will talk about the negative aspects of it because the while has been introduced here. Great. If that has been our thought, let's see. ECT is extremely effective against severe depression, some acute psychotic states, and mania. All the positives. Though. The word is though. And that's your keyword, guys. Take care of it. Though, like many medical procedure, it has its risks. Probably it should tell what the risks are. So let's see. Since the inception of ECT in 1938, the public has held a strongly negative conception of the procedure. Initially, doctors employed unmodified ECT. Patients were rendered instantly unconscious by the electrical current, but the strength of the muscle contractions from uncontrolled motor seizures often led to compression fractures of the spine or damage to the teeth. So we come to the negative effects of it. In addition to the effect this physical trauma had on public sentiment graphic examples of abuse documented in books and movies, such as Ken Casey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's, etc., portrayed ECT as punitive, cruel, overused, and violative of patients' legal rights. So what they are saying that ECT of course has some benefits, especially if I talk about severe depression, some acute psychotic states, but there are so many problems, there are so many risks that are associated with it, and they talk about various risks, and they add on to these risks, the document or the perception that has been created in books and movies, which says that ECT, or which has portrayed that ECT is very punitive, cruel, overused, and violative of patients' legal rights kind of a process. And that is why public has held a strong negative conception of the procedure. Modern ECT is virtually unrecognizable from its earlier days. Now it is talking about the modern ECT. If it is virtually unrecognizable from its earlier days, ideally it should be better, because earlier days is something which is not good. The treatment is modified by the muscle relaxant, which renders muscle contractions practically non-existent. Additionally, patients are given a general anesthetic. Thus, the patient is asleep and fully unaware during the procedure. And the only outward sign of a seizure may be the rhythmic movement of patient's hand or foot. ECT is generally used in severely depressed patients for whom psychotherapy and medication prove ineffective. It may also be considered where there is an imminent risk of suicide, since antidepressants often take several weeks to work effectively. Now they're talking about the good aspects of ECT. Exactly how ECT exerts its effect is not known. So we have seen that yes, ECT exerts its good effects, but how it does it, we do not know. But repeated applications affect several neurotransmitters in the brain, including serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. ECT has proven effective, but it is not without controversy. Though decades-old studies showing brain cell death have been refuted in the recent research, that means what they are saying, that decade-old studies that showed that brain cells die because of ECT, this is something that has been already refuted in the recent research. But many patients do report loss of memory for events that occurred in the days, weeks, or months surrounding the ECT. Some patients have also reported that their short-term memories continue to be affected for months after ECT. You see the negative effects. And that is the reason, because we do not know how ECT exerts its effects, and therefore it is not without any controversy because of all these problems. So they say, though some doctors argue that this memory malfunction may reflect the type of amnesia that sometimes results from severe depression. So certain doctors say that this memory malfunction, the short-term memory loss, is not because of ECT, but because of that severe depression that you had, for which you came here to be treated by ECT. Now, what do we understand from this RC is that the RC is talking about ECT and why it is a controversial psychiatric treatment. RC also talks about that there are certain problems in which ECT is highly effective. How does it exert its effect? It is not known. Okay, so let's go and see the keywords here. That is what we discussed. Question number 1. According to the passage, why has ECT been viewed negatively by public? If I see here, I can see that the public has held strongly negative conception of the procedures, and then they go on talking about why, reason, the way ECT is performed, and in addition to the effect that is documented in various books and movies, which portrays ECT as punitive, cruel, overused, and violative of patients' legal rights. That is the reason why public has held a strongly negative conception of the procedure. So when I talk about all these options, let us try to eliminate. Though ECT is effective in many cases, the medical community is not certain how it works. Absolutely correct data, but not the correct answer, because that is not the reason why it is viewed negatively by the public. And that is what, guys, you have to think, that there might be many options, or rather I should say there will be many options which will be correct by means of the data that is given, but not exactly pertaining to the question that is being asked. The only answer in this case can be cultural depictions of ECT imply that the therapy infringes upon the lawful rights of those receiving the treatment. Next question. Which of the following can be inferred about the way in which the modern form of ECT works? What we can infer about the way in which modern form of ECT works. So it is talking about the modern form of ECT and what can be inferred from that. Now, inference is an outcome, right? Something that you derive from the information that is given only. So when I talk about the first option, greater amounts of the neurotransmitters, these, and these, seem to reduce symptoms of depression. It is nowhere mentioned, so we cannot infer it. ECT cannot be used prior to attempting psychotherapy or medication. Again, they haven't said this. All they have said is that people who come to ECT have at least gone for some psychotherapy or medication, and that was not effective, and hence ECT is what they resorted to. But nowhere this is mentioned, or we can infer that it cannot be used. Gone. This word, succinylcholine, completely immobilizes the patient's body. Where? It is again not mentioned. It simply mentions this. When I talk about this particular muscle relaxant, they simply say that the treatment is modified by the relaxant, which renders muscle contractions practically non-existent. But if I talk about this, it is not talking about that it completely immobilizes the patient's body, because the same concept, the same sentence concludes at a point where they say that there is some rhythmic movement of patient's hand or foot, which is the only outward sign of a seizure may be this. So how can we say that this completely immobilizes the patient's body? So this is again not that is being inferred about the way in which the modern form of ECT works. If I talk about ECT generally works faster than antidepressants, absolutely this is said very categorically, because antidepressants take a lot of time to get into the body and show good effects, but ECT is quick. One ECT treatment is often sufficient, nowhere it is mentioned. So the only plausible answer becomes the fourth one. It was a good question and a lot of confusion because of the options. Third one, the author mentions amnesia as a possible side effect of severe depression in order to. Now, if I go back to the same RC, author says that, people are getting this short-term memory loss and all that stuff, and then some doctors are refuting it. They say that this is because of the depression that they had, not because of the ECT. So why is author mentioning amnesia as the possible side effect of severe depression? In order to introduce a possible alternative cause for short-term memory loss reported by some patients. Now, when I talk about the very first, acknowledge one of the possible negative side effects associated with ECT, they are not talking about it. It is not there to acknowledge one of the possible negative side effects associated with ECT. If I talk about to draw a connection between brain cell death and short-term memory loss, no, absolutely not. Nowhere it is related. It is simply talking about that if ETC is not solely responsible for this amnesia, then something else might be which some doctors are claiming. And what they are claiming is that their depression actually is the reason for their short-term memory loss. Each of, each of the following is cited in the passage as a current or historical criticism of electroconvulsive therapy except this. So we have to find out which is not that historical criticism or current criticism that is given in the passage. First, ECT may cause the death of brain cells and memory loss, explicitly mentioned. In certain cases, ECT was portrayed as a means to punish individuals, absolutely mentioned. ECT had the potential to be used in inappropriate situations, inappropriate. The passage talks about the overuse of ECT along with, it is viewed as punitive and cruel and everything else. Yes, it is absolutely mentioned. Early forms of ECT did not adequately protect patients from secondary harm brought on by the treatment. Absolutely. They talk about how, sometimes the spine is affected or sometimes the teeth are affected, which only happened in the early form of ECT. Yes, this is also a criticism that is mentioned. But when I talk about the last one, repeated applications of ECT affect several neurotransmitters in the brain. It is mentioned, but it is not a criticism. They haven't said that it's a problem. They're simply talking about that, yes, ECT affects several neurotransmitters in the brain like this, and that. Now, this is where, guys, we have to realize the fact what exactly the question is asking from you. Next one. Read this RC. So I will urge you again to pause this video and then read this RC so that we can go to the questions. I hope you must have read the RC. So let us see. In archaeology, as in the physical sciences, new discoveries frequently undermine accepted findings and give rise to new theories. The passage starts with a great premise that they are saying that in archaeology, the new discoveries very frequently, that means very often, undermine the accepted findings and give rise to new theories. So ideally this passage should explain how, so the passage should ideally give an example that this is a new finding and now it will give rise to new theories and it will undermine the accepted findings as well. If we are clear on this front, guys, then we know what is going to be there in the passage and we are done with the questions. So let us see. This trend can be seen in the reaction to the recent discovery of a set of 3.3 million year old fossils in Ethiopia, the remains of the earliest well-preserved child ever found. Earliest well-preserved child ever found. The fossilized child was estimated to be about 3 years old at death, female, and a member of this species. The Afarensis species, a major human ancestor, lived in Africa from earlier than 3.7 million to 3 million years ago. Now look at the quotes, guys. First thing that we have to understand is that they are talking about a recent discovery which will undermine the accepted findings and will give rise to new theories. The new discovery is the discovery of a fossil which is 3.3 million year old, and it is the remains of the earliest well-preserved child ever found. And they are talking about the age of that child, the gender of that child, and the species of that child. Now they talk about this. Her completeness, that means probably they're talking about completeness of the fossil. So completeness of the fossil would be in some way, maybe the development of various organs, or that they found the fossil thoroughly complete with every part preserved, right? So let us see. This guy says her completeness, antiquity, and age at death make this find of unprecedented importance in the history of paleoanthropology. said this guy, Zeresene Alamsejet, a noted paleoanthropologist. Other scientists said that the discovery could reconfigure conceptions about the lives and capacities of these early humans. That means what other scientists are also saying is that yes, this particular thing is very important and very changing of the accepted findings. Great. Now let us see what were the accepted findings. So they say, prior to this discovery, it had been thought that the Afarensis species had abandoned the arboreal habitat of their ape cousins. However, while the lower limbs of this fossil supported findings that Afarensis walked upright, its gorilla-like arms and shoulders suggested that it retained the ability to swing through the trees. Now see the contrast, guys. The moment they have used the word however, that means it will change. They say that earlier it was thought that Afarensis species had abandoned the arboreal habitat of their ape cousins. That means they separated themselves from monkeys. However, this fossil says that the gorilla-like arms suggest that the ability to swing through the trees still remained in them. That means they probably did not leave the habitat of their ape cousins. And this had initiated a re-examination of many accepted theories of early human development. Also, now adding on to it, also the presence of a hyoid bone, a rarely preserved bone in the larynx that supports muscles of the throat, has had a tremendous impact on the theories about the origins of speech. That means what they are talking about, that this particular bone, which is rarely preserved bone, it has had a tremendous impact on the theories about origins of speech. So it could be said that this particular bone might be related to speech or origins of speech, or it might be important to it. The fossil bone is primitive and more similar to that of the apes than to that of humans. So they are saying that this fossil is more similar to apes, less similar to humans, which is again opposite to the initial thought that this species has abandoned the habitat of their ape cousins. And they also say that, but it is the first hyoid bone found in such an early human-related species. That means all the species that they have found so far, as far as apes are concerned, they probably did not find any hyoid bone in that. But in this one, they have found it. Understood? So let us go to the questions. And this is, by the way, your keywords. The primary purpose of the passage is to discuss a controversial scientific discovery. No, there is no controversial scientific discovery that is being discussed here. Contrast various theories of, no, they are not even talking about various theories of human development. Support a general contention with a specific example? Absolutely. They are talking about the general contention. What is it? That new discoveries frequently undermine accepted findings and give rise to new theories. And then they use an example to explain it. Absolutely correct. The, the confusion lies between this option and the last option. That means to refute a popular misconception. But again, they are not refuting a popular misconception. That was also a concept that will now require a revisiting. There is a great difference, guys, between the word misconception and the notion that has been prevailing basis previous theories. So we have to really be cognizant of the words that are being used in the options. The passage quote Zersene Alam Sejed in order to, okay, qualify the main idea of the first paragraph, provide contrast to the claims of other scientists. No, absolutely not. He's not even talking about the qualification of main idea of the first paragraph. Support the theory regarding linguistic ability of this species? No. What did he say? Let us see. What did he say? He says that her completeness, antiquity, and age at death make this find of unprecedented importance in the history of paleoanthropology. Why is he saying that? He is saying this because he wants to support the stated significance of the discovery. He wants to re-emphasize that this discovery is highly significant. Why? He gave an answer to that. He gave an answer to support it. It can be inferred from the passage description of the discovery of the fossil hyoid bone that excellent question, guys. All the options will look like correct answer. Now we have to think really cautiously here. They say it can be inferred from the passage description of the discovery of the fossil hyoid bone that first, this was capable of speech. It looks like, guys, that this species was capable of speech, but I cannot say that 100%. All I can say is that yes, maybe hyoid bone is important for speech or one of the important elements of the speech, but I cannot say whether they were able to speak or not. Similarly, when the third option says that the hyoid bone is necessary for speech, then also it is wrong, because if hyoid bone is necessary for speech, that means if hyoid bone is not there, then somebody cannot speak. But again, this is something that is not mentioned in the passage. They are saying that it is important. This finding is important because it is related to the origins of speech. But whether or not it is necessary, I'm not sure. The only inference that I can derive is that the discovery of hyoid bone necessitated the re-examination of prior theories. Why? Because they say that this presence of hyoid bone is very important discovery, because so far we have not seen this in ape-like species, but this is for the first time we are seeing it. And if I talk about the hyoid bone was the most important fossil found at this site, yes, it might be. But what is the most relevant inference? Why the author is saying so? The author is trying to mean this one, that the discovery is causing the re-examination of prior theories. And when I talk about each of the following is cited as a reason that the fossils discovered in Ethiopia were important, except, that means which of the following reasons say that the fossils were important? Now, guys, it is a very easy question if we simply take care of one particular thing, which is what are those options that are explicitly stating that because of this, the fossil is important. First, the fact that remains were those of a child. Absolutely. That guy Zelensky said that. The age of fossils. Yes, absolutely. They have mentioned that it is very old. The location of discovery? Absolutely not. Of course, they were discovered in Ethiopia, but nowhere in the passage they have said that because they were discovered in Ethiopia, they were important. They are only important because they were way old, they were specific to a child, about a bone that is not usually discovered, and because it is complete in nature. That means the intact nature of the fossils. The answer is the location of the discovery. The impact of the discovery of hyoid bone in the field of archaeology is most closely analogous to which of the following situation? Now, guys, what are they trying to say? They are saying that if I bring something new, it is possible that it refutes the existing notions, and therefore it asks for the re-examination of the all previous notions. That is what has to be. That is what is the case. So some situation that talks about similar stuff would of course be analogous to this particular situation, discovery of hyoid bone, right? And the only answer that is exactly similar is the fourth one, which talks about that newly revealed journal entries, new revelation lead to questioning of certain accepted historical interpretations. That is the only thing that is given in the passage also. That because hired bone has been discovered, it is causing the re-examination of all the existing theories. And the only option that is analogous to this is that. All right, guys, so we are done. Please post your feedback and queries in the comments. And yes, do ask your friends to join our group. You can always meet me at ASHISH on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. See you soon. Bye bye.